the summer of 1994, and my uncle just bought a camcorder. For most regular families back then, when you bought a camera, it meant you were going to film all these great family happenings and these barbecues and these good times. Well, my cousins decided to beat the shit out of me on camera and pull down my pants. It's fast forward 20 years, and I developed a really mean streak and defense mechanism in humor. Congratulations, cousins. You made a comic. Today on the show is a fellow dysfunctional family member and hilarious comic, Ken Krantz. And this, like that zoom in on my little boy penis, it's a bit too much.
My parents split up when I was 2. My dad left my mom for her best friend. And
bold move.
Yeah. Yeah. But they stayed together until the day she died. Like, they probably, had they met first, I feel like they would have.
That's like his person he should have been.
Yeah,
with.
That was, and then my mom ended up remarrying.
That's a tough moment, though.
Yeah. It was, and I was 2 years old when it happened, so I'm not. It was just the way things were. Like, my older siblings have, distinct memories of before and after. I'm like, I was just born. I was in the after.
You're in the after part of it,
right?
Well, because you were so little. You just don't remember it.
Right. Yeah, I was. My dad left when I was 2.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So, but he moved into.
So that's how this happened. That's how you become.
That's why I'm. Yeah. That's why I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
So he moved into her house, which was literally right. It was right down the street. Like, I grew up in a town in New Jersey, like the suburbs. And there was a cul-de-sac off of my street.
Okay.
My dad lived in the cul-de-sac off of my street. So it was, without exaggeration, it was maybe a 3-minute walk to his house. So my mom remarried when I was maybe 4.
Now, I got to ask the specifics of that. Your dad, with his new wife, who was your mom's best friend.
Right.
Moved up 3 minutes away.
Yes.
I mean, is your mom like, what the fuck? Could you have been farther?
Yeah.
I'd imagine so. I imagine like, that's a little much.
I never asked, but I got the impression she didn't get a vote. Like, they didn't sit her down.
Of course not. No, of course not. I'm not saying that she could have influenced it, but
no. I don't.
Was she like, what the fuck, guys?
I don't think she.
Go 7 minutes away.
Yeah. I don't think.
I don't want to fucking be taking my garbage out.
I'd
see.
I'd be having a football catch on the front lawn with my brother. My dad would come walking his new dog and his new kids right past our house, stop and say hello, toss the ball with us for a little bit. It was crazy dysfunctional, but for me, it was just normal because I didn't have anything to compare it to.
By the way, none of this shit happened in the Brady Bunch.
It was if you read between the lines. I think Mr. Brady.
Kids. Yeah, right.
So, but it was really weird because my stepmom had 3 kids, and my mom and dad. I'm one of 3.
Okay.
So because they were best friends, the kids were all best friends. So my stepmom had a son that's my brother's age and a daughter that's my sister's age. So they grew up
all older than you.
Yeah, I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
So they grew up best friends, so and then one day it was like, hey, you guys aren't friends anymore. Now you're siblings. It was weird.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then my mom remarried a dude when I was 4. And he had 2 sons.
Got it.
And he, which was very weird, like back because this was the early 80s.
They're older than you?
I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of
everyone, even the step.
Yep. I think there's 8 of us total.
Got it.
And I'm the youngest. So
I like that you think there's
just off the top of my head.
Right.
So my stepdad moved in with he was a single dad. And their mom moved across the country. And
so that's a way to do it, by the way. Go across the country. Don't move 3 seconds away. You go across the country. That's a better move.
Yeah. So I grew up in a house with 5. Mm-hmm. There was 5 of us in my house. And then right around the corner, there was another 3.
Okay.
So like all 8 of us were like, 8 or 9 houses apart.
Yeah. Now that sounds like it could be a lot of fun or really fucked up because it's all the steps together, all the step kids together. Like, is that tension or is that good? Are the kids enjoying that or are they like, this is fucked up?
That's a good question, and I wouldn't even know because it's so just I was just so young. Yeah. So everything that
it's just what it was to you.
Yeah, it was
normal.
just, and there's nobody close to my brother's the next closest, and he's 6 years older. So it's not like there was somebody that I matched up with that I hung out and.
So did you feel like you were like just the runt of the group? Like, did you feel like you were like? Not quite in the.
Oh yeah. No, and like shit rolled downhill in my house, and I was the bottom of the hill. Like there was nobody. Yeah. Like maybe I could take my shit out on the dog or the cat, but
they weren't listening.
Yeah, like I had no recourse.
Yeah,
and I wasn't. It's not like I ever got to an age where I got big enough where I can give it back to my brothers. Because they were always, like
by the time you're old enough to do that, they're moved out. right? Like they're all old enough.
I'm walking around 16, like I think I'm ready to throw a punch. Where are they at? Yeah, everyone's like, we have jobs.
We're married. Yeah, don't fucking leave me alone.
You're still angry about when you were 10? Like, what's your problem?
Right. Yeah, and actually probably but you don't like it's a hard thing for an older sibling. I'm a younger sibling too. Yeah. I just have one older brother, but like I think it's like. And I was close to my brother, and he was 4 years older. But there was a moment that's why I asked you if you felt like the runt of it, because like I remember being like an 8-year-old, and he was 12.
Yeah,
and I felt like a giant difference. He was about to go into high school soon.
Yep.
And and I wanted to hang out with him and his friends. He let me, he let me tag along, but you definitely feel like I'm just a little brother here. I don't matter right now.
Yes.
You feel like that, even though it's not necessarily the sibling's fault, but like you do feel like that as a younger sibling.
And
you've got so many older ones ahead of you in this situation.
Yep. And it was mostly like, I think my mom and stepfather, it's crazy when you think about like, all right, let's just make a family with 5 kids under one roof. I think they started and were like, oh, this is way harder than we thought.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna travel a lot without you guys.
Yeah.
And my stepfather worked, he owned his own company. He worked crazy hours. He was never around. My mom was helping him get this business off the ground. So a lot of it was just, it was like being thrown to the wolves. It was just like 5 kids, the oldest is in charge of the next oldest. They're in charge of the one under them.
Right.
Everybody was the
hierarchy.
Boss. Yeah. Everybody
there's a structural corporate structure system in the parenting of
my parents they used to love going to Cape May. They would go to Cape May for a week. And this was back in the 80s. They'd just leave each kid $20. Like, here you go.
Right.
That's when $20 would last a kid a full week.
Yeah, get a whole pizza and like 3 pizzas out of that. Yeah.
And so to answer your question, it was fucked up, but it was also a lot of fun. Like it was a lot of.
And you're, as a young one in the group, but much younger, you're, I guess, observing, like it's fun. It's more fun than fucked up to you because it doesn't see, like when a kid just grows into any situation, it doesn't really feel fucked up until they get older and they're like, oh, wow, that's a little weird. Right? Like where they may have felt more like it was fucked up.
Yes.
In the moment.
Yeah.
You're like, this is all my big siblings. But like also you're not, the downside of where your position is in that is that you're not relating to anyone either. Like you don't really have like even if they're good to you, you don't have like a friend in your siblings, more so than like they're just older siblings.
Right.
Yeah, the little more caretaker or busy.
Right.
Yeah. And does that lead to you like going inward? Like are you kind of a loner there in that house because even though there's a lot of people there, you don't have, like you have to kind of entertain yourself?
So it's funny you say that. I did learn to entertain myself. I was always, still am, pretty good being alone.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. It's almost like,
I love being alone.
Almost feel like there's times where it was like, I almost felt like an only child.
Yeah.
Because
which is bizarre. So
there's a house
seven
full of
older
kids,
siblings,
but they didn't fuck with me. You know,
seven older siblings, but you feel it's like the way people describe like walking around New York City with so many people, you feel like you're alone.
Yeah. And I'd be in the
you're
backyard.
surrounded by people.
I'd be in the backyard playing with G.I. Joes or just using my imagination to play whatever dumb game and ignoring all of them. And so I got very comfortable being alone. But I learned to observe, you know, like I would just kind of sit back and take a lot in. But I also learned that like my family, it was a lot of ball breaking between the kids.
Yeah.
You know, dinner was like, so I think that's why I think a lot of comics who grew up like that.
I had that with my cousins, like my older cousins, they like would abuse the shit out of me.
And you equate it with love, right? Yeah. Where you're like,
us. I mean, I still to this day I don't enter rooms where things are that brutal that they were, like in terms of like the humor.
Yeah.
We were fucking mean to each other. But like for me, they would, I have an older brother and he did it too, but my older cousins who were much older, they would physically beat me up, right? Yep. Like throw me around, hold me down, embarrass me, hurt me, like all that stuff.
Yep.
And then also verbally, because they were older and they could do that at a better, but it developed my wit and my shield, my mental and verbal shield so early that by the time I was like 10, I was slamming these motherfuckers.
Yes.
Like I was saying brutal shit.
Yes.
I was cursing. I was mean. And I didn't realize that they were forming a comic.
Yep.
Because I was all I had was verbal. I couldn't hurt them.
Yep.
Physically. Every once in a while I get a nut shot in. I remember being multiple times being held down and getting one free arm again, like just driving my cousin's testicles up to his asshole, and I'd be like, I mean, like really fucking, and then they would be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I'm like, "It's all I got. I got one free arm." But besides those few moments where I could just get one hit in, the only way you could really defend yourself was verbally.
Yeah, and I learned to do it at a young age, and I also learned like go for the knockout punch.
Yeah, be brutal.
Yeah. Just say the meanest, funniest thing that you can think of. And it's almost like
say something that they can't rebut.
Yeah.
Say something so brutal that's exactly how I grew up with my I didn't have the siblings, I had just the one, but we were so brutal to each other. We were so mean. And I remember outsiders coming in, like outsiders meaning friends.
Yeah.
Even family, like my parents would have friends that were their age, or I'd have a friend, or my brother would have a friend, and you were like, I don't know if you're prepared to sit at this dinner table. This is not, I was the only growing up. I was the only child of an immigrant parents, right? And so my parents from Sicily, and so a lot of my friends were Italian descent, but they didn't understand. Like when you have that upbringing, it's a different than having like being like fourth generation.
Yeah.
And so they didn't understand. So they'd be like, I think they were a little bit enamored by the, like, we're going to come, the food's going to be great. I'm like, yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yes. The food will be so much better than the food you have at home, but you're not going to leave happy. Like, believe you'll be fed. You'll be fed, but halfway through that meal, you're going to be like, I got to get the fuck out of here because it's brutal.
You're going to leave full and sad.
Right. Which is, honestly, if I had to write an autobiography, is like what I'd probably title it. Full belly, empty heart. So brutal. So you had that with your siblings.
Had that with my sibling. Every night at the dinner table was like a roast battle.
Yeah.
And if you didn't want the attention on you, you had to be pretty vicious.
Right.
So I learned that at an early age. Mm-hmm. And I think it definitely helped, mold me into a comic. And it's funny.
Were your parents looking at it like, because I can feel like my mom has a very good, like, you could say anything about, like, I could make fun of her all day long should just laugh.
Yeah.
Where like with my dad, he would laugh. He had a good sense of humor, but then it hit a point where he's like, enough now. You know, were your parents looking at you guys being so brutal with each other? Like, oh my God, you guys are assholes? Or were they were they kind of in on it?
They were pretty good spirited about it. And I think that it was just so tough getting through the day-to-day of managing a house with 5 kids and also starting your own business.
They just let you fucking tear each other
that
apart.
It was just like, as long as you're all still alive when we come home, we're not. And
if one of you aren't, honestly, there's a lot of mouths to feed. It's like, would it be the worst thing if one of you died? right. But
there's still 4. That's still a pretty good number.
You know, we have to throw a funeral. There's a lot of mouths to feed there too. But no, I agree. Like it's a generational thing too. Like parents up to a certain point, which is like if the kids are generally safe, to my knowledge, I don't really know what they're doing all day, but they come back home every day. Yep. They're alive. Yep. They might get bullied. They might be doing shit I don't know about, but it's like they're here. But that's enough. That's a baseline. It's enough.
Yeah, but also like I'm Gen X, so I feel like we were that last generation that was kind of like feral kids. You know, like you guys. Yeah, you're to be seen and not heard, but there wasn't any latchkey kids.
I had an episode with Joe Fernandez called
I love Joe,
that we titled Fernandez with an S. There's 2 Fernandez, Joe Fernandez. That's I didn't know that. I didn't know the one with the Z. But he was like, just when you do my website, just make sure you do the S. Anyway, Joe, we did a whole episode on growing up as latchkey kids, and right, like your parents didn't fucking know what you did all day.
They didn't know. I mean, I remember, I guess my stepdad had ordered the Playboy channel for his room.
Nice.
But they fucked up and put it in our basement, and like I discovered it. And like,
by the way, if you're not of the age of like cable and ordering, like, yes, you could order channels on the television to come to a certain spot in your house. This is a very foreign concept for people.
Yeah. Oh, it was just piped into the basement.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that it was in the basement.
Well, did he realize he wasn't getting into his room, or he also got it in his room?
Maybe he got it. You know what I mean? I don't remember.
He didn't know there was a problem because like, oh, I've got it here.
I just remember it happened, and I was at an age where I didn't care about titties. Like maybe I was 8 or 9 years old, and I remember all of my brothers.
I think I cared about titties at like 8.
Yeah,
I did. Like, I feel like I had a weird, like I got exposed to stuff early on, and I just like I was already very interested in that kind of stuff when I was like too young.
Yeah,
before I even knew what to do about it. Yeah,
my brothers spent a lot of time in the basement, and then one day they'd all pissed me off on the same day, and I ratted out the Playboy channel.
Oh,
because I didn't care.
What a fucking narc! You piece of shit! What a fucking
I feel bad about it now, but I just remember like.
Listen, porn was hard to come by back then. Like you didn't just get porn. You didn't have this. You couldn't just stream free porn.
It's insane. Yeah, like there wasn't algorithms that knew you liked titties.
No, the algorithm was the fucking video store. Like it was like that. Maybe that guy knew what you liked. Dude, you know, like that was the algorithm. He's like, oh, you have a weird foot thing. Here's this thing. You know, and like there's the porn. You know, porn was VHS or magazines.
VHS. I remember finding a tape under my parents' bed.
Yeah,
a VHS tape.
Yeah,
and at first glance, I thought it said Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And I was like, this is my favorite movie. What are they hiding this for?
Indiana Bones.
I popped it in, and it was, I don't remember the exact title, but it was something like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Poon.
Man, you know what? I will say this. I miss parody movie porn. They don't do that shit anymore. Or if they do, I don't know. It's probably hard to find. That shit was so clever and stupid, like incredibly corny, but like it was all puns.
Yep.
And even the dialogue. The dialogue was so bad, or they would like remake a scene, some semblance of a scene. Shit, there was a little bit of an art in it. Now it's just like, you you just like open up Pornhub and it's like, oh, bukkake. I didn't want that. That's a lot. That's a lot. you know? Porn used to be very theatrical or cinematic in a way.
There's some production value to it.
There was production value. I mean, don't get me wrong. It wasn't high quality cinema.
I said some production.
Yeah, but somebody tried is the point. It wasn't just like, all right, start fucking. There was some to it. So my first discovery of porn was also through VHS. My brother had all the porn, right? To this day, we never talked about this, by the way. My brother had like I don't know, maybe like 15 VHSs of porn that were like labeled other things. Because he had them like in his room. It would be like Bloodsport. You know, it would be like you would just like name it movies, like real movies, or like hockey game in a certain date. I never knew, were those tapes originally those things that he then taped over, or were those labels on the VHS tapes cover-ups from the beginning? I don't know. Like, was it ever Bloodsport? You know?
Probably not.
Or maybe it was at one point, and then he used all of his existing tapes, because he didn't have money as a kid. But I don't know. I don't even know how he recorded the porn.
You get very creative.
It was his handwriting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how he recorded the porn. I just know he had the porn. Like, he just had all these VHS tapes. And so this is fucking, I don't think anyone under 35 listens to the show. But if you're at the age where you've only experienced porn through a phone, understand how fucking difficult this was. I had to go into my brother's room when he wasn't there.
Yep.
Get a tape out. Remember the slot, because it was he had physical media. To get the thing, I had to leave the slot open, so I remember to put it back there. Go to my room. I had a VCR in my room. Put the VHS in. Play it. You know what's fucked up about that? Is now that I think of it, now that I'm saying this, my starting point of when I put it in press play is when my brother came.
Yeah.
I never added that up until just now. That's really fucking gross. Like when I'm like, oh, this is pretty hot. It's like that was the scene that made.
Now you know what did it for your brother.
All right, well that's something I'll have to explore later on in therapy. But just opened it as I was saying that. I was like, oh, weird. Because my point is, I would take it in, I'd put it in, hit play, and I'd watch, right? And then I would, when I was done with it,
have to get it.
I'd have to rewind it. I had to remember mentally where that was, and I had to like look for cues. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the part where she says like, oh, that's a big dick. So I had to remember the dialogue or the physical position and get back to that spot, and then go physically put it back in the slot. This went on, I want to say, for a solid 2 years of our lives. You know, I'm probably like 11. 12, like that kind of age where like you really start getting interested in that stuff. And my brother's a teenager, so I was like, he's in the peak of his pornography, you know. And those are the kind of things though. If my brother had ever confronted me, I'd been fucking mortified. I was not comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah,
at all. With my friends, with my siblings. My sibling, with anyone. Like no one fucking knew. I really feel like nobody knew me until I was like 34.
Yeah.
I held all that shit, and it's because of me, because I grew up very anxiety driven, hearing my parents argue all the time. Like my parents got divorced later on. Like I was much older I was like in college when they got divorced. And, but it was like, that should have happened years ago. So it's like, I had a lot of anxiety around like that, and they're arguing, and around just who I was. I also didn't feel like, besides those moments where I'm like at the table with my family.
Yeah.
And making fun of it. Like being funny was the only thing that made me feel comfortable. Or being mean sometimes made me feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, like, but also
it wasn't always funny. Sometimes it was just fucking mean.
Sometimes mean is so funny.
Right.
Like,
to be fair, then and I'm not really going for funny in those moments, but it was funny. I'm going for mean more than I'm going for fun at that age.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Because that's how you slam someone, is by being fucking. You say something everyone else laughs at, and they like can't rebut back.
Yes.
And I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin outside of those situations, which I didn't realize till later on. Like, oh, I could actually do that. There's a living to be made in the because as you're a kid, you're just like, this is how you survive.
I could make entire rooms full of people this uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be me. Why am I suffering alone?
Yeah, I'm only ruining 3 people's nights now. I could ruin at least 100 lives in a night. And I meant 100 people's nights, not 100 lives. I'm not destroying their lives. There's been a few. There's been a few shows where I feel like I may have hurt people deeper than that night. But that, I grew up, like, I feel like I lied to everyone around me growing up about who I was. I felt like an outsider in every room I was in.
Yeah.
For a long time.
It's funny you say that. I actually felt the same. It wasn't until I started doing comedy late. Like you were joking about being 34. I started comedy at 33.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And
I started at 20.
Yeah. I wish I'd started young.
Yeah.
I think when you start older, you have a little bit of a leg up because you just have more life experience. 100%. So it's like I had fully formed opinions.
You start better. Yeah, you're starting on a better foot. I was
but you're behind
awkward.
the 8 ball just in terms of, networking and
career
making connections.
Sure.
And
there's some big comics that started very late though.
Yeah.
Like some really big names. Like I feel like Lewis Black, wasn't he one of those guys that started super late?
Everyone always uses Rodney. Like Rodney didn't make it till he was 50. It's like, okay, can you name 3 others? Or it's everyone.
Yeah. It's not, but he didn't. Well, I don't know. Did he start early?
No. He I don't
he
think
started late.
He got his break late. Yeah,
late.
It's like he broke late.
Very different time. Like there weren't comedy clubs everywhere either.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I mean? Like comedy used to be like at casinos and restaurants and like as a part of other shows with music. Like he didn't have the outlet either.
No,
until like. Then movies and stuff.
Then it was like the Tonight Show. Like the Tonight Show is how you
eventually like Carson and then movies. They get to break out into a different media. To be recognized, right? But like, so you start in your 30s,
right? But I remember like once I just because I it's like I have a big circle of friends and they're all professional, a lot of them are corporate and very successful.
What are you doing? Yeah.
But I would always, they were my friends, but I never felt like one of them. Like I always felt like there was something different in me. And I did same like you said, I'd feel like an outsider in every room.
Everywhere.
People start talking about, their investments and the market, whatever route they take to work, and I'm like, I want to blow my brains out. Like,
I still have a hard time with those conversations.
Yeah.
I still can't, even as older and like more mature. Well, I guess you were in your 30s when you started, so you were already there. Like you go like, I don't fucking care how you got to work.
Yeah.
I don't care.
But then I started comedy, and you meet comedians, and all comedians, it's like they kind of lead with their dysfunction. They're not trying to hide it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, these are my people.
That's a great point because everyone else is hiding their shit.
Yes. And comics they get up on stage and they're like, here's all my blah. They just vomit it out. Here's my dysfunction. Here's more of it. Like, oh, that's pretty cool.
And even when you talk to them off stage, like they're just, who they are.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hide anything. Their whole living is being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so you finally meet your people.
Yep. Yeah.
At that age, and I didn't feel comfortable in any room until I was around comics and like, like even when I was younger and we were being funny, it was survival. I was still building the skill. Even with my own family, it was like I felt like an outsider a little bit with my family. I felt like an outsider with my friends. My friends didn't know I had like dreams of being a comic.
Right.
They had no idea. I didn't tell them. And and then I started, the guys I grew up with, I started breaking away from them a little bit. And I was dating this girl and I was in a horrible relationship with her. But I was dating her and I used her as leverage to like get out of I was like, oh, I got to hang out with her. And I wasn't even telling them I was doing stand-up most of the nights. It wasn't her.
Yeah.
Like I was with her sometimes. Yeah. And like the relationship was there. But like I didn't tell them. And then eventually they were like, you doing stand-up, dude? I heard you were doing stand-up. And I was like, yeah, about that. I was like, don't come see me. Like I was so embarrassed about it.
It's embarrassing, right?
But my whole fucking life, I hid everything. I didn't want my friends to come over because I was afraid they were going to get made fun of by my family. I didn't want to when I was like talking to girls, I was always trying to like act like I was fucking tougher than I was. I'm not a tough fucking person. You know what I mean? Like I'm silly and there's a little bit about me that'll fucking lose it, but I'm not a tough person. You know what I mean? Like I'm an anxiety driven, very anxious, very like I don't, everything about me was false. I remember telling my friends that like I kissed a girl before I kissed a girl. Like I was lying about everything.
Yeah.
I lied about fucking everything growing up because it just was. I built a whole fucking persona that wasn't me. I was like acting like I was this little fucking tough Guido with the fucking chain out. I hated all of it when I was doing it. I really didn't like who I was. Which
that's
like
you just thought like this is who people
that's who they
want
were.
me to be.
It's who they were. So I was
yeah.
just imitating who they were. I was talking like them. I was acting like them. I was dressing like them. And then I'd go back home and I was like listening to like I remember it's like one of my Chris Rock was like my first like comic that I loved, and then I was like Opie and Anthony, who I ended up interning for when I was in college for like 2 years. So that kind of broke it open for me too. It's around that same age, around 1920, where I was like, oh, there's like a life for me out there. There's like people who are like me. Yeah. There's broken-minded comics. That's who I'm comfortable with. People who embrace the dark.
Yes.
In their lives, and people who are funny, obviously, is like the main thing. But like, you know, just people who are just fucking like I'll get along with give me a dark musician. I'll get along with that person too.
Yeah.
You know, like an art, like
sure.
like a broken dark artist is like kind of the only people I feel like I relate to.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, it's fun. You mentioned like you were embarrassed by doing stand-up, and I'm so happy to hear someone else say that. Because
so when I started interning for Opie and Anthony, I remember, did you ever listen to them growing up?
Yes.
So, do you remember the person on their show that would come in? She was like crazy, Sandy Kane?
Nah, I wasn't like fanatical.
So she was like a person who she was like a crazy person in New York City, but she also did stand up, right? And she was like really out there. I remember when I started doing shows, like bringer shows at Stand Up New York.
Yep.
One day, or I did like a mic there or something. Sandy Kane came in, and I'm like, we already knew each other because I was an intern at Opie and Anthony. I would see her all the time, but she probably didn't know me by face. And I was like, fuck. I didn't want her to reveal to them that I was doing stand up.
Oh, yeah.
So I got real fucking crazy about it. Like, I was like, oh no. But I go up and I do my set, right? And then like 3 weeks later, she comes into the show and she's wearing like a cowboy hat and fucking fishnet style. She's fucking out of her mind, right? And she comes in and she's like, hey man, I know you. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you fucking don't. Because I had already seen that every once in a while when an intern would be like, I do stand up, they're like, do it now. And they would fucking rip them open. You know what I mean? Like they would abuse that person. I'm like, no. Opie and Anthony, which is like the radio show for comics at the time. This was when they were at XM. Like, there is no fucking way. I'm a year into this. There's no fucking way they can know I'm doing stand up. They can't. And they didn't. They didn't find out because I was just like, no, you don't know. She's like, do you just, she said at one point, she's like, do you do comedy? I was like, nope. No, I'm not very unfunny. I don't. And luckily she's so like, you know, her attention span's all over the place. She let it go. I was embarrassed I didn't want anyone to know I was doing stand up.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm still embarrassed by it. Like
when somebody asks you what you do.
Yeah, you know, I would, you know, whatever.
When people with real jobs go, what do you
whatever
do?
my day job was at the time, I would just tell them I did that.
Yeah,
I would never.
Right, me too. I did it with. I worked in advertising for years, and I would always just be like, creative director. I'm advertising. That's all I said. I didn't say comedy.
Yep. You know what's interesting though? It was like
my wife would blow up my spot. She's like, he does stand up too. I'm like,
in with my ex-wife, like in my first marriage, she, in her defense, I wasn't doing stand-up when we got married. I started.
See, I was doing stand-up before I met my wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
I started maybe 2 or 3 years in.
Got it.
So it wasn't necessarily what she'd signed up for.
And you had to at some point be like, hey, you know what I want to do? And she's like, what? Did you have that conversation?
She was encouraging with like, oh, go do an open mic. Like we would go to Stress Factory and watch a lot of shows. And I would say like, I would always watch the feature act and be like, I think I could do that. Like that doesn't seem that hard.
15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And then, so she encouraged me to like do a mic. And then my brother got me drunk one night and just dared me. And I was like, fuck it. And we went and did it. And I think maybe she thought it was just going to end there. Like I could just, but then I went back the next week and I did it and I got really big laughs. And then it's like
once that opens.
Before.
Yeah.
Once
like,
it happens.
Oh,
this is like a drug. Like I need this. I've done a lot of drugs in my life and this is better than all of them.
Yeah, man. My first show ever, I did really well.
Yeah.
And it was like shocking. I didn't think I would. It was like, I'm going to try this. First fucking 1 minute first minute on stage. I was hooked for the next fucking 20 years. You know, it just opens it up. You're like, this is, because even then when you bomb after, and believe my first bomb, I thought I was like, fuck it, I'm never doing this again. But like, it's a chase. It's that drug chase. It is, what it could be at its best. So nothing's going to stop you from doing it. I'm getting that. I'm going for that every fucking time.
Yeah. So she would be like, she was embarrassed by it, and then like if we were at a dinner party and somebody was like, if comedy came up, when you're starting, I was excited initially, when I would tell people, but then you see people have weird reactions, and you're like, maybe I gotta.
Or you ever have this? You invite people, like if you had to do like a bringer early on, you invite people and you don't have a good show.
Yeah,
and then you're like, well, I'm gonna stop inviting people.
Yeah,
because it could go either way any night when you're starting out.
I gotta get out of bringers. Yeah, but she would say like, oh, my husband does comedy on the side. And I was like, I would be like, oh,
and I don't know if a non-comedian listening to this will understand why that hurts.
I would tell her,
it hurts.
It hurts because it's
you're like, no, this is actually my dream. It's not a side. It's
right.
I'm not in a cover band.
Right. But also what you're telling people without being aware of it is like, he's not that good at this.
Yeah, on the side.
That's what she doesn't realize. That's what she's saying, but that's how people are taking it.
I think most comics. I did a show not that long ago. I did a show like at a weird venue, and everyone bombed, and because it was a bad crowd, and they weren't expecting the show. It was like one of those like kind of bar night type things. It was not that long ago, a few years ago, and I remember one of the audience members came up to me after, and he was like, "I thought you were pretty funny," and I was like, "That didn't go well," and he's like, "Yeah, but this isn't your full time thing anyway, right?" And I was like, oh. So it hurts, because like this is what you're doing, this is what you're pursuing, and that person is not trying to belittle you by saying that, but for most people it's like, oh, if you're in a cover band, you're like, oh, he's in a cover band too, it's fun. It's like a hobby. It's a hobby.
Yeah, you make me sound like a teacher, that plays in a cover band in bars on the weekend.
Yeah, but for a comic, it's an insult.
Right. And I would say to her, like, you don't even have to say anything. You just, whatever my day job, just whatever it was at the time.
Just say that. Hide the fact that I do this.
You could say, oh, he sells insurance. Like, I don't, you don't. But, so I don't know. It developed, or it was like, oh, I guess this is kind of embarrassing, right? Because it doesn't feel like a proper job.
Oh, it's not.
And
it's not. It could be a living, but it's really not a job. I mean, a job requires you to be somewhere.
Yes.
Often.
Yeah.
And steadily, and you have a boss.
Yeah.
It's not a job. It's a career, but it's not a job. Right? There's a difference.
Yes.
It's not a job.
Yeah.
A job has a boss,
right,
and a set hours.
Oh yeah, like a job is like if you quit, you have to alert somebody,
right?
Like you got to at least text somebody.
Yeah. Like if I die today, no one professionally will find out for
still
weeks.
Going on tomorrow.
People I work with will find out for weeks.
Yeah.
They won't be on Monday. They won't be like, "Where is he?"
Yeah, no. People will still be wishing you happy birthday on your Facebook 6 months later. Comics who haven't seen you.
My wife's gonna log into my account and be like, "Actually, she's gotta like."
I just had a comic ask me soon. They were like, "Hey, whatever happened to that guy? I haven't seen him in like 10 years." I'm like, "He died in 2005."
Yeah. Right. If you've been doing this long enough, there's a lot of comics that have passed.
Yeah.
A lot of comics die young. And what you just said, you're still getting happy birthday messages on your Facebook. It's the saddest fucking thing because it's so true. Every comic knows a comic that they haven't seen in a while that they post on their social or they reach out to them and then you find out they're dead after you reach out. You're like, oh, well, you feel a little icky about it. You're like, did I just reach out to a ghost? Ew.
Be like, this dude's ghosting me. Like, yeah, no, he really is ghosting you.
Ghosting you. He died 17 years ago. He's moved on.
I still get embarrassed, even like before the show, just waiting to go on.
What do you mean, at the club?
At the club, I'm looking
around.
Embarrassed
that? They're all there for the show.
But that's embarrassed. Like, I'm embarrassed for them. I'm embarrassed for me.
I get embarrassed after, because if you're before, you could kind of blend in. Like, after the show, if it feels like I'm hanging around, that's embarrassing.
Yes.
Because like, let's say my wife came to the show. This like doesn't happen often. We have a kid. She's not able to come to shows a lot anymore. But if I'm like waiting for her to come through, it looks like I'm waiting for people to like congratulate me on a job well done.
Yep.
I hate that.
Yep.
I fucking hate that. Like, I'm still at the venue, but I'm out in the open because it doesn't have like a proper green room. And I'm like just there, and people are like, then you could see people like, oh, that's the comment. Hey, great job. And you're like, no, that's not what I'm. That's what I'm here for. That's embarrassing to me.
They don't know that you're just hanging around waiting to get paid. Like,
I'm waiting for my check and my wife.
Yeah.
I just, these are the real life things now I have to wait for. But yeah, so you're embarrassed before the show?
I get a little bit like
if you're hanging out in the open?
No. Like it's more, I don't know what the word is. It's more like mental gymnastics.
Internally you're embarrassed.
Yeah, I look out at the crowd and I'm like, this is so dumb. Why are these people paying money?
No, I'm with you now. I know what you mean now.
It's a weird concept.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this? Like, why would anybody care about what I have to say? They don't even know me.
When you think
Do they
about
not have friends that can make them laugh? Like, why are they... It's a little embarrassing.
No, because they have to fake laugh with their friends. But like I am with you on this. I thought you were meant like physically.
No. Like just
no. I know what you mean.
What am I doing with my life?
I know what you mean. You see the crowd and everyone's like, oh, they're like excited to be there. And you're like, what are you doing? Because when I think about if I pay a ticket on something, I'm going to a production. Yep. I'm not going because I don't go to comedy shows. You know, it's like you get jaded. You don't go to comedy shows anymore. I'm not going to places to even like music wise. Like if I'm at a restaurant, there's music, great, but I'm not like paying to see like local acts, right? So like I always think about like the things I pay for. And I'm like, if I paid to go to, not that I'm like a Broadway fan, I'm not, but like if I paid for a show, I want a production. If I went to like go see a concert, I'm expected this production. And then you look in like, you know, a restaurant with a comedy night or a comedy club, it's like underground. And it's like, you know, and you look out of the crowd and you're like, wow, people, I mean, thank God they pay for it.
Yeah.
And in reality, I'm not shitting on comedy because it's the best, in my opinion, one of the best live performances you could do because it's intimate and it's real and it's the most raw art form there is.
Yeah.
For sure it is. But because I no longer pay for those shows because I do the shows, I do look out of the crowd. I'm like, wow, people pay for this.
Yeah. You know, it's funny.
But I used to before I did it too.
My daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, like she's helped me. Between her and my girlfriend, like they're both working on like getting me to change. My daughter just the other day was saying
everyone's just trying to get you to change.
That's how
everybody knows. Just like
I wasn't even trailing off. They just want me to be someone else. My daughter the other day said to me, she was like, Daddy, you have the coolest job. You get paid to make people laugh, and people have hard days. And when you laugh, you forget about everything. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that is kind of cool.
It is the most incredible thing. It's a toxic industry.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of fucked up things, but take out all the bullshit. Take out the fucking bookers and the clubs and the industry and all the bullshit. Because we all do it not for that stuff. We have to deal with that stuff to do it. The moment your name gets announced, you walk on stage and you make people happy.
Yes.
And uncomfortable and all the things that come along with being a comic, you know, because sometimes it's like, I don't want everyone. I want a few people to be pissed off. Sometimes you want that. But like, regardless, right? Like you're killing, let's say you're having a great show. You're like, I don't fucking know anything that tops this.
Yeah.
I mean, professionally.
Yeah.
Right? Like nothing tops this.
Yeah.
I don't care what fucking jobs you guys have. If you're successful and you're enjoying the money, great. But the work, you're not enjoying your work the way I'm enjoying my work.
No.
There's no fucking way.
No, definitely.
You're not having a good time like that.
No.
You know?
No. That used to lead to arguments too, like with my ex-wife.
Oh, really? You're partying?
She never saw it. She never saw it as a job.
Sure. Sure.
And, you know, it was paying bills. Maybe it wasn't paying every single bill, but it was paying bills every month.
Right, you were making a living.
It was helping.
Yeah, but a lot of people's jobs in America don't pay all their fucking I mean, so the fucking I think the average fucking income is like $40,000.
Yeah.
Nothing's paying all the bills. You struggle, you put things out but you're having a good time.
Right.
And you're not in maybe the best relationship.
Right.
And that person's looking at what you're doing is like, would you just?
And then they see, and I'm hungover. It's like
when you're in a bad relationship, the person you're with doesn't really like to hear you laugh and see you smile when they aren't a part of it.
Right.
If you have joy I've seen people in divorce situations. If you have joy outside of your relationship, they might not consciously want you to be miserable. Even though they're making you miserable, they might not consciously want you to be. But if you're with your boys and you're laughing, they're like, "The fuck is it?"
Yeah.
That's when they come out and they're like, "Can we go?
Yep.
Can we go? Leave the party." It's like, and you're like, "Wait, why?" And it's just because you were laughing too hard.
Yeah.
When you're in a bad relationship, those people don't like to see you thrive without them. And comedy it's a fucking hang. Like, it is fun.
And it's like,
but it's also fucking work. It's also not fucking easy.
No.
I don't care if you're only working for a half hour that night. You drove there, you got there, you got to fucking enter, you got to be good.
You have to be professional. You have to be able to play well with others.
You're like, okay, yeah, Becky gave you a hard time at work, but did you have a fucking drunk dude threatening to kill you?
Yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Because I did. That's work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it's like, oh, I found there's like 5 jobs on the planet that it's acceptable to be drunk at. And I picked one of them.
Right.
So that adds.
I worked in 2 of them. I worked in advertising and I worked in comedy. I'm drinking right now. If I could just drink while I work.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
It's like, that's a good job.
Right.
So, yeah, it was always like, oh, you're just out there having fun. It's like, well, yeah, I'm having fun, but a lot of it.
Yeah, why is that bad, first of all?
Yeah.
Right. But it's work.
I know most people end up in jobs that they just fell into and they don't enjoy it, but like, don't take it out on me that I fell into something that I happen to love.
Because it's more the norm.
Yeah.
And also then you get in a place where it's just bitterness. It's like, they don't like their job. So why do you get to enjoy your job?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, my wife and I are very like-minded. Like, we've had regular jobs, but she wrote a children's book. She's an author now. And like, we both had that mentality. It's like, our jobs will get us, day jobs will support the thing we love to do. It's like, being on the same wavelength as people, but like, it's hard to find your people.
Yeah.
You grow up in that mentality and you're very uncomfortable in your skin. You know what I mean? Like, this is like a PSA for like, it gets better,
Yeah.
Which I think actually was like a LGBTQ thing. It's like, it gets better. For comics, it doesn't. It just always stays pretty sad, but at least you get to do what you love while you're sad, right? That's the goal. If you could just do the thing you're passionate about while you're broken inside, I think you're winning.
If you can have 20 to 45 minutes of just like pure joy.
Yeah,
a day, and it's not always. It's like,
Who the fuck said that life was ever going to be happy from the moment you woke up to the moment you go to bed? That's not real.
Yeah, I don't think she understood that it was like, a lot of this is like punching a clock on a job. Like, I don't enjoy
most of it.
Driving 2 hours each way.
Yeah, like some random dude reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Could you do my podcast?" It's not fun. I'm doing it because I feel like it's the right thing to do professionally. Dude, thank you so much for coming on. Love to have you back. This is great.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for having me.
If I can convince you to get out here, I can. Do you live near close here?
I'm 20 minutes from here. You can always get me out here.
I don't feel that bad. Ken, plug anything? Even if you've plugged it before, plug it again because, new show.
September 21st, I'm filming a 30-minute special. Me and the great Sergio Chacon are each doing 30 minutes at the Dojo of Comedy in Morris Plains, New Jersey.
Very cool.
You can go to TIFFS, TIFFS, TIFFScomedy.com, and the links should certainly be up by now.
All right. A Bit Too Much podcast on all the socials, A Bit Too Much on YouTube and wherever podcasts are heard. This is A Bit Too Much. Like, subscribe, comment, all the things you're supposed to do when you're listening to a podcast. Just hit a fucking thing. It's not that hard. It's like it, Comment. I want to hear you talk about this topic. It's not hard. Just do it. Don't be a dick. This is A Bit Too Much.